What we're going to be talking about in this lesson is tables. HTML tables have a reputation for being a little difficult because when you work with them initially, it's a little disconcerting to have them changing size on you all the time. That is perfectly normal. That's what HTML tables do. Another thing you want to consider when working with tables is that the content that you put inside it needs to overall add up to what the overall table size is. If the content is larger than what you say the size of the table is, there's a little bit of a disconnect there and you might not get the behavior that you intended. So we'll look at making sure that the measurements are all right in this exercise. Now, older web pages sometimes were built with HTML tables for structure. You'd have overall tables with nested tables inside them to force things to be in a particular position. We're moving away from that because it adds so much code and it tends to be a little harder to edit and a lot slower. It also is more challenging for different types of technology to get through, that we're moving to having the style sheet, the CSS, handling the layout if at all possible. So tables are perfect for original table technology, table data. I want to have a list of hours, for example. That's tabular data. I don't necessarily need to give up on tables entirely just because they were used for another purpose. So we're going to create a brand new page. And when you have an HTML page out, what you're going to do is add in a new table. Now, your screen might or might not look like mine. I have taken, for example, this bar here, and it was in this position. Whoops. Let me snap that back into place here. It was up here. When you first come into Dreamweaver, it wants to be on the side. I pulled mine up to the top of the screen. You can also go ahead and use Insert and Table, or you can use this particular bar. Either one is fine. I'm going to go into the Common bar and go over to where it says Table and click that button. This box is what you need to fill out to get the characteristics for your table. I'd like to have a certain number of rows and columns, so I'll say 3 rows and 2 columns. And I'll have the width be filling whatever its parent container is. So I'd have it be 100 and %. Now, that could be just the page itself. So as they resize the page, the table is going to stretch. But it could be inside other items and it'll be 100% of whatever is wrapping around it, whatever might be constraining it. If I don't want it to stretch, I don't want it to resize, then what I can do is change this to pixels. And I will make this be, say, 250 pixels wide. The thing about that is that if it's a fixed size, it might look this size on one machine, that size on another, this size on a third because of their monitor resolution. Whatever pixels you have set up on your screen is going to give you that appearance. So you might have people have it appear to be larger or smaller on their computer, and you need to design with that in mind. I don't particularly want a border on this for the moment, so I'll set that for 0. Now, cell padding and cell spacing. Padding is what the content to the walls. So what's between the content and the walls, that's the padding. If you want some breathing room between your content and the cell wall, you add padding around it. If you want space between the cells, that's your cell spacing. I don't particularly want either, so I'm going to set them both for 0. Then I'm going to come down here and fill out these 2 pieces. The caption for this is going to be hours of operation, and the summary will be down at the bottom. Now, the caption is going to display in the main window. The summary is something that could be read by screen readers if they chose, and even though you might not have people with a lot of assistive technology coming to your website, screen reader technology is also used by things like Google. So it's a good idea to have your page be as easily translatable, easily accessible as possible. I will click OK, and then I can come in here and add in some content. Now, when I tab into the next cell and I start putting in my hours, and I tab again, you'll notice that it shifted back and forth in a dramatic fashion. That is what HTML tables will do in Dreamweaver. That's how they're supposed to behave. So don't be surprised if as you're working they suddenly change shape, because they're trying to keep up with what they think it is that you want. Now, if I wanted to go through and make changes in here where this is a fixed amount, I can go through and check my properties. On your properties bar, you have a little white arrow in the lower right-hand corner. It might be pointing up, it might be pointing down. If it's pointing up, you're going to see two parts to that panel. If it's pointing down, then that panel is a little bit shorter and it's been hidden. So mine, I'm seeing both parts. And that's useful because I can set this particular cell to be a fixed width, and that will actually control the column. When you go through and look at the bottom of the page, you're going to see a lot of tags over here. It says body, table, TR, and TD. So the body tag is the overall container for this item. Then you have the table tag around that. Inside of that, and if I click the table tag, you will see it grabs it. Inside of that, the TR, the table row, can be highlighted, and I can select just TD, the table cell, to grab the table data. I want to be able to get just the column, so if I control one cell, then that column will come along for the ride. So I'm going to make sure this cell is selected, and I will make the width be 100 pixels wide. You'll notice that what happens with your table is it shows you 100 and then 250 below it, because it's trying to keep track of what you think the pixel size should be, or whatever your measurement size you're using. Now, if I was to set this particular table cell for a width of, say, 200, now you'll notice that Dreamweaver is getting a little confused. At the bottom, it says 250. Because that's what we said we wanted our table to be. And then above that, it's saying, you said 200. Are you sure about that? We've got 165 here. And then this, you're saying 100. Well, we could do 85. So I'm trying to do my level best to show you what you asked for, but the math isn't working out for me. So what you could do is you could fix either these two measurements, or if I went to table and I selected the table tag, I could change the width on that by taking it out. Now you'll notice that it shows 200 and 100 and nothing at the bottom. So the columns are fixed. The table itself doesn't have an overall size. Let's see what this looks like if we do this in a couple of different ways. Fixed versus flexible. I'm going to go into each one of these cells that I put numbers in and take them out down here. And you'll notice that it keeps jumping around. And you'll notice my table collapsed down to the width of the content. Because I don't have a specific size telling it to stay open, it's going to shrink down to hug what I have in there. If I wanted to select the table, the easiest way to do that is to grab the table tag. You don't want to click and drag across the content. Just grab the table tag from the bottom. Now, to show you what I'm grabbing, I'm going to switch to the code view. All of this is that one little table. Now picture this. Picture a website that has a giant table, and then in the header there's a table with a nested table inside that for a piece. Then there's tables with subtables in those to hold different articles, and then there's subtables next to that to hold different icons, and you have in it 45 different tables nested all within each other. Imagine editing that. Not a lot of fun. Plus, more code generally equals slower transmission. So you want to try to keep your code streamlined. You want to keep yourself saying things in a way that is efficient, elegant, reasonably smooth. Unlike perhaps I do in real life, I'd like to have my code do that for me. So I'm not going to be using this for positioning. I'm going to be using this for tabular data.